Okay, our next, let's see, we have unfinished business for Heritage Cove Farms.
Defer to legal counsel.
Well, where we left it last time, there was quite a bit of questions involving the two different zoning districts on this particular parcel, and whether or not independent requests for specific primary special uses can be asked for each of those parcels. I explained that indeed was the law, but I needed to provide you guys with a copy of the case on point, which I did here with the anchor steel and conveyor case versus Dearborn. And I attached a memo, so I guess the first question would be if any of the planning commission members have any questions regarding the memo and the application of the anchor steel and conveyor company case, which is very similar, I think, factually to what is before the planning commission right now with Heritage Cove Farm. If not, I can give a brief summary so that the benefit of the public can understand what we're talking about. Refresh everyone's memories.
I've got a few questions, but I got to find it here.
Okay, sure.
Stack of stuff here.
The anchor steel case involved a manufacturing plant where they were manufacturing conveyor systems for a variety of businesses. This property consisted of 3 separate zoning districts, with only one of the zoning districts allowing for the manufacturing operation, which of course was the crux, or basically the whole purpose behind the business and the ownership of the property. The 2 other districts had separate uses, which included the request on the part of the manufacturing plant to have a drafting room office on one parcel, separate zoning district, and not on a parcel, but it's on a separate portion of the same property in a different district, and then storage, which was meant to feed the manufacturing plant in another portion of the property, also in a separate district where storage was otherwise allowed. The city of Dearborn said, no, we're not going to accept that. We're not going to allow you to have these permits because the whole operation in of itself is a manufacturing facility, and therefore, even though independently you'd normally be allowed to have these types of uses on these other portions of your property that are differently zoned, we believe it's part and parcel and part of the whole here, and therefore we're going to deny it. And the Michigan Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. It's not relevant as to why the person wishes to have storage, the applicant, or why they wish to have a drafting room in these other districts. Even though we know that it's feeding the manufacturing operation, those uses can be standalone because the reason behind having those uses in that district is not relevant for purposes of zoning and land use. And when we get to the main reasoning here at the end of it, the court stated it is both unreasonable and arbitrary to deny plaintiff the use of its property in each zone to the full extent of its capabilities because such use either facilitates or hampers the operations in still another zone. Moreover, it does not follow that because the product of the drafting room is to be used in connection with plaintiff's manufacturing operations, such operations will be likewise performed in the drafting room, whereas the storage of steel in an adjacent building to be used for storage only will constitute fabrication of conveyors, meaning that there's no manufacturing going on in the zone where they're storing the steel, and therefore that's fine. In this instance, plaintiff seeks merely to use his property for a use consistent with the restrictions imposed on each of the particular areas of that property by the zoning ordinance. The plaintiff had a clear legal right to have permits issued for such uses. Defendant's actions in withholding the granting of said permits was an arbitrary act. We so hold. There is no merit in the balance of the contentions raised in the issue. So usually when you see a we so hold, that's pretty much the target area. John?
I think this obviously is right back to where I was originally. They're saying I'm wrong, so I'm wrong. However, they're very clear that the flow of uses is going in one direction and one direction. It's from the separate parts that are authorized in those other districts going to another district, and it can't go back the other way. So if the steel manufacturing was sliding over and part of it going back over to that other district, they wouldn't allow it.
Well, maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure that's what it says. But assuming that you're right here, This goes back to our discussion about the therapy aspect related to the convalescent and the therapy treatment going there. In this case, you have in the PLS district an application for the restaurant. We discussed whether or not it was a restaurant. I'm not going to rehash it, or whether it's a cafeteria, possibly accessory to the requested cabin colony use. But using that reasoning, then it's still more logical for the planning commission to say we're not going to allow therapy in the PLS district, because everything that's being fed is coming from the PLS district. It needs to go over there for the ultimate purpose behind what's going on, which is the therapy. The farm uses, we have mixture of other laws that are in place, right to farm, plus what is basically used by right in the AF district, and to a certain extent the gardening use in the PLS district, combined with the right to farm act. And other than some of the cabins in the PLS and the cafeteria issue, which we've already gone over extensively, the balance of the property is wetlands, and the only thing on the wetland area is going to be a dock there. But I would agree with you with that reasoning that that would back up the restriction on the therapy use in the MAF district, and I don't think that runs afoul, and maybe the applicant will disagree, of any federal laws pertaining to the Federal Fair Housing Act, addressing the housing issue, or the ADA, because the property still has ample room in the MAF district to conduct that therapy activity as part of the convalescent home.
No, that was my vote.
Okay.
I thought also that this is a rather old case, and that the company had purchased this, and then subsequently they wanted to and subsequently the zoning changed.
Yes, but the zoning changed before they made any application for the permit, so there was no issues of lawful non-conforming use that wasn't, part of the analysis of that case. Age doesn't matter. I mean, Shepherd it's still, good law, and it's still part of the law of the state.
And then it was I'm kind of trying to figure this
Sure.
out as we go. Also, I understood that they had said, well, if you want to put in like a drafting facility, you're going to put that drafting facility as part of your existing building, and so that's not going to work for you because that's not going to meet this manufacturing or whatever it was. So, but they also then the company said, well, if I put my drafting building on the property but somewhere else, you guys are going to approve it. And they said, yeah, then it would be an approved use. And so then the courts just simply said, well, yeah, if you're going to approve it in one place, I mean, rather when you put it on another building, it doesn't necessarily make that a manufacturing building.
No, it doesn't, because there was more than actually one building in here. Manufacturing
There
plant.
was another
Then they were going to
warehouse.
put the drafting on top of another
Yeah,
building that
yeah.
was in that other zone district.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then it felt like we were back to me it felt like we were back to square zero. Then they were saying, okay, if you want to apply for other uses, then we would just measure them against the existing criteria, which is exactly what they're asking us to do. They're saying, well, you already have the zoning in place. We're not changing anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's been there, and now they're simply saying to us, okay, you have to look at the uses that we have described and how we want to place them in these different areas, and then you have to make that decision. So I wasn't sure how that decision helped me a lot. It seemed like they ended up right where we have to start.
Well, yes and no again, okay, because the applicant, I guess the answer is, I think it's no, because the applicant came in here and said, look, we know what's what in which district. While they're asking for accommodation, and whether we get there or not under the Federal Fair Housing Act or the ADA may be questionable. That's going to be up to the Planning Commission here. But they picked it apart, maybe a little too broad, saying, well, in the PLS district, we're asking for a restaurant use and a cabin colony. In the MAF district, we're asking for the convalescent home, but we want the therapy use throughout both districts based upon ADA and Federal Fair Housing Act criteria. But they did pick primary uses in their application for each of the two separate zoning districts, and that's the point behind the conveyor case out of Dearborn as well. The court's saying it doesn't really matter what's the reasoning behind it, even if it's feeding another operation where the property as a whole is being used for the main purpose, which is a manufacturing plant. Okay, we don't really care about that. What we care about is what is allowed within each of the zoning districts, even if they are located on the same property, which has an overall purpose. And that's pretty much what's going on with Heritage Cove Farms. There's an overall purpose. We know that. The question is, regardless of that overall purpose, what are they allowed to do in the two zoning districts that exist on the property? And that's where the therapy question kind of cuts in there, because it doesn't really fit into any of the requested uses in the PLS district, even if the Cabin County works, even if you consider not, say no to a restaurant, but it's a cafeteria that may be accessory to a Cabin County. The rest of the issues involve, which were allowed in public comments, involve the disability itself, which is an area that really cannot be considered as far as denial. In fact, that's where you have to make a reasonable accommodation. What I see here is that, do you have enough here to do something given the existing ordinance where the reasonable accommodation factors don't come into play by taking a look at MAF and PLS separately, MAF being the convalescent home and the accessory uses that are in the MAF, and the Cabin County and the accessory uses with the Cabin County. The applicant mentioned at the last meeting, when was it, I think the social hall, if somebody uses a cafeteria between meal hours, I don't think that that's really a primary use, as far as gathering for social purposes. I assume that they would do so in a regular Cabin County regardless, okay? And then the other one was the country club request, which I believe was in the MAF district, but that doesn't make, I don't see it making a whole lot of sense given the fact pattern and the request here. I did add, because I couldn't think of a positive finding on the country club, a negative finding, on that aspect of it. So I believe that it boils down to the convalescent home treatment facility and the accessory uses related to that in the MAF district. And even though the uses proposed and asked for in the PLS district, mainly being the Cabin County and whatever accessory uses, such as the cafeteria, are in the Cabin County, regardless of the fact that they feed the balance of the operation, so to speak, the overall purpose still has to be viewed as a standalone request and use, and it doesn't really matter, what that purpose is, and that I think is the core of the conveyor case. Yeah.
Sure, and primarily, and then that raises the dilemma is that you begin to say, well, then this therapeutic use might not be approved when you get into the Lincoln Stream District, that it doesn't exist there, but then the overall description of the therapeutic farm is people wandering all different locations and they're getting therapy in different spots, as a result of their being there, and as a result of the staff being around. And so it's hard to say, okay, when you walk over that line, then therapy stops and everything is copacetic to a restaurant.
Well, I guess you can ask the applicant, what does therapy mean? But generally, when they're going to be in their Cabin County, they're going to be either residing or eating there. Whether they're farming and the fact that they're farming or gardening, whether that's good for them or good for anybody else, whether they have a disability is not necessarily therapy, although maybe the atmosphere is a good atmosphere for these people to be in. Perhaps it'd be a good atmosphere for people who are not disabled to be retired there or at their Cabin County. And that goes back to the example of what if this was purchased by the VFW post. And the VFW said, well, we want to have this Cabin County, and we're also going to have some workers there that live in the Cabin County. We want the cafeteria there. We want to be able to farm there because it's relaxing, and we're going to make some money. We're going to put a resort in the MAF district. We're going to have some employees in the Cabin County in and out of there, as well as ones living in the MAF there, and they're going to run this resort hotel complex on the MAF district. I mean, that would be the same type of thing.
Yeah, can you understand my dilemma? Because there's no way on God's green earth you can enforce, or you even know then where that therapy component is going to be, unless you've got people walking around watching everybody thinking about, like, is this therapy happening or not? So essentially, you're just carte blanche saying, yeah, we're going to say there's no therapy here, but we understand there's going to be therapy only. so don't worry about it.
That, I think, is a problem that we not only run into with this type of situation, but in a multitude of cases of zoning special use approvals, including some of the conditions where the conditions don't come to light, and then are being violated. If the old tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to see or hear it, doesn't make a noise. I mean, you're right about that, but I don't think that's unique to this particular situation.
Yeah, I just, I granted I haven't been on the planning commission for a long time, but I can tell you in my year, I've never seen anything that anybody's ever asked for anything like that that's this complex, where they've sort of convoluted different uses all into these different things, and then we have to decide kind of the wink and maybe, and we'll give you a little, it's just,
it's not easy.
Highly unusual. Yeah,
well, I don't think anybody here determined that this was an easy decision to make, but Stan has worked pretty hard on it. We tried to narrow issues. I wish the issues were narrowed further by the applicant, but you have to basically take the applicant as he comes to you, including the variety of uses proposed. And I think there's some of the uses proposed, like the country club. Whether you try and do that by analogy doesn't make any sense. Okay? The cabin colony, part of it has to do with your ordinance. Your ordinance is very liberal on what it allows, both in the MAF and the PLS district. Right? So part of the challenges that are facing this planning commission have to do with the uses that are already existing in the ordinance. Mm-hmm. And by example, you can have a resort, hotel, motel in the PLS district. What if somebody approached and wanted to have a 60-room, motel, hotel in the PLS district? I don't think you're going to have a lot of happy people who are neighbors if that type of proposal was brought forth, which would be much more intensive as well. So you have to live within the means of the uses that you have. If there's a policy change that legislatively that the planning commission wants to recommend and that the township board would wish to adopt, that's up to them and up to you to bring that. But we have to address the ordinance and the uses that exist now.
But that same request for 60 or 70 rooms would also have to meet lots of other criteria than simply it's part of zoning. There might be other things that may cause that thing to rise or fall or succeed or fail.
Sure, maybe it gets shrunk down, or maybe on there, and that's where also conditions come into play.
Thank you. That makes sense. Appreciate that.
Mike?
So bottom line, 2 zoning districts, we review each use in each district.
Yeah, that's pretty much. That's what the applicants provided to you. And that's why you had that discussion last month, saying, wait a minute, what about the if this is being a whole? Can we basically say we're not going to consider any of this type of stuff because it's part and parcel of what is being proposed in the MAF and not allowed in the PLS? I think legally you'd have some problems if you basically said, assuming, let's say the planning commission said we're going to allow this only in MAF, all the other stuff that you're asking for in the PLS, no, I think you'd have some problems. We do our best to defend it, and you can go ahead and make that decision. But I have to tell you, I think we'd have a difficult time defending that type of decision. So that's why you have to look at what's being applied, even though we know the residents living in the cabin county as proposed in the PLS will be going over into the MAF district.
So it really isn't black and white then, you're saying. It's not that the 2 districts, if it's not approved in forestry ag, then it's not approved. You can't tie it into the whole project.
No,
you're
you're going to have to look at each part.
Yeah.
Each part. So you can't tie it like you thought we could as part of it.
No,
I know.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's just still not completely clear.
Excuse me, could I just ask that you not talk over one another? I can't make an accurate record.
Okay, so we still are going to look at 2 districts and the uses in each district, not as a whole.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm...
Okay. Any other discussion?
We've had a lot of comments on the fact that the findings appeared to be one-sided. I think council has tried to make them balanced. We have another full packet provided by the counsel for the people against them, which is obviously giving us the other side of the coin. I think we have to consider both packets. I would propose as we go through them that we look at the proposed findings from our council and see whether there's any interest or any of the comments from the other packet to be put on our packet for consideration. And we can discuss each one as we go along. I find some of them valid, some of them I don't.
Okay. Mike?
I think that's good.
Brings up another question. You know, in the past, we could never use information that came after the public hearing. Now we have findings of fact, and I agree that some of them are pretty interesting, and I encourage we take a look at those and use them if we feel that they should be put in there. You don't have a problem. There's no legal problem with that.
Findings of fact are not, an exhibit, because we don't know what the final result is going to be. Only the final result of the meeting and the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission will become part of this record as a whole and as amended. So the rest of the stuff gets tossed anyhow.
So we can combine.
So we can
there's a
pull some
difference
of these.
doing that. We're not taking extra exhibits or other letters or expert reports or things of that nature. The exhibit list is unchanged.
Okay. Great.
Well, another thing for me, maybe from my learning, is I kind of thought that the findings of fact would be kind of a compilation of the both sides and all the information that we received. Okay, and then when I got the one, it was fairly well one-sided, and then as I understood it, that all of a sudden we get another finding of fact, but it doesn't come through our attorney, it comes through their attorney. And my only feeling around that is, as a planning commission, I think we represent both sides. I mean, we listen, we try to give each side a fair hearing. And on one condition, we got a set of findings of fact that didn't seem to include a lot of information from the homeowners and things like that. And we, as taxpayers, paid to get the first one. Nobody had to, we forked out that money. But then the second one, I thought we should have went back and gotten, and unfortunately, the word was, well, the taxpayers, you guys go foot that bill. So I didn't feel like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just didn't feel like there was a sense of fairness there for the taxpayers on both sides to be adequately represented.
No,
But that's exactly what I was proposing to do, is to look at the both packages.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's a good way to do it. I'm just saying, requiring them to pay for the second half when we saw the first half, I just feel like that's not a fair representation of our taxpayers.
It's not unusual to have parties who are represented by counsel, whether on behalf of the applicant, who also did some findings at the beginning, whether on behalf of a citizens group to present findings. That's not unusual at all. And a citizens group who is active and wishes to be heard, I mean, part of being heard is making a decision whether to hire legal counsel and whether they wish to have legal counsel draft findings as well. There are plenty of findings in the original one as well that would result in a denial. Mm-hmm. But there are also legal issues that surround this particular application, and put together findings that to the best of the ability here based upon existing law. So my role as the attorney for the county, as it is for a township or a city, is to provide the best advice to put the county, which includes the taxpayers, in the best legal position, including making sure that the taxpayers are not subject to legal jeopardy as a result of decisions made by the Planning Commission or the CBA. Most of the time, though, you're correct that the issues are a little more, actually, let me give you an example. With the ZBA, most of the time you're going to have findings that are one-sided. And frankly, to get that drafted by statute, variances are really granted. The law, as far as Planning Commission decisions, is that if the applicant meets the standards under the ordinance, it has to be granted. You don't have a choice on that. It has to be done. They have to meet every standard. You had a multitude of findings, actually in the original draft, other than the site plan, which is not support the standard. And then I had to add in the novel stuff, the stuff that's not in your ordinance related to the ADA and to the Federal Fair Housing Act. Bottom line is, you are also welcome not to, you can use the negative findings in here, you can use other findings, you can make up your own. That's basically how I stated. These findings are also drafted by, in part, and participated with staff, with both Scott and Steve. But ultimately, yeah, it's a tough one. You have to make a decision. And if you cross stuff out and you make a decision, then my job is to support whatever decision you make, but I have to provide the advice in advance.
If I could add to that too, I think as far as staff goes, John, I hear your concerns definitely. When we draft the findings, either with legal counsel or staff drafted, it's not meant to communicate a particular direction. If we list seven findings for something and 5 against, it's not meant to communicate that the 4 should win based on the number of findings. Our intent is to provide the most legally solid information to you and not provide something in there that could be seen, especially in this case, as discriminatory or something along those lines that would factor into your decision. So it's just meant to be solid. And the other point that I need to make is that in a case like this, like you said, when you're approving a special permit or site plan, you only need one factor to not comply. So it's not necessarily something that every one of those will have a negative. If topography isn't changing much, you're probably not going to see anything against the topography. So it's not meant to be a mathematical calculation.
Well, I thought your point was excellent. I hadn't thought about the one which says, yeah, you represent the county, and also you be a tremendous expense if we're headed in another direction too. So I think that was something I hadn't considered. So thank you. That was something.
Mike?
A possible not met in 18.7, if that would happen, then we go to the accommodation part to see if there would be a change. Is that the way it happens?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so it's not like a normal one. If we find it not met, it's a
We
done
have
deal
to
here because of
basically
the
do
acts.
1 by 1 by 1.
Yeah, and then at the end there, if there's ones where it would result in it not being met, then yes, you'd have to consider whether it's a reasonable accommodation under those standards, and I gave you some samples out of there.
Okay, with the new findings, those samples for met and not met are the same. You don't have any changes to those?
Not on
except
those,
the ones
no.
you provided. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question on that, and just shut up here. But I got a bunch of stuff here when I walked in the door that I don't know whether I just missed it in mine, but I got this new one about definition of infirm, and then I also seem to be with some exhibits 160 to 165 that pertain to this. And I don't know, maybe I didn't catch that or something.
We just got that.
There were 2 draft findings, one for your last meeting, one for this. And the second one,
Got those.
the infirm, the highlighted one on your right-hand side, that finding was left off the second one, but was included in your first one. So
Put back in.
it's been put back.
But the numbers have changed. It was the first one, now it's the last one, and there are no numbers to relate to in this one. So as we go through, we're going to have to do them ourselves. There's no 18.7A, 18.7B, and C like we normally do, which is not terrible. It's just we have to realize that we can add them ourselves because we usually refer to one of those, or maybe one stands out the other one. So we'll have to be cautious.
Yeah, I mean, you can cross one out. You can reuse some of them. You can say, I like this one, but I think it applies, under this
To another
standard. Yes.
You could use a conditions for met and change a word and put it in a not met, or the other way around.
That's right.
So there can be we got a lot of options to work on both of these findings. And it's going to take some time because we got pages and pages, so it may not be something we can jump through in a hurry. I don't see it because there's a lot of points, good ones on both sides that we didn't even look at before. So there's a lot of information here.
So this one, okay, maybe I got just confused. So this
This
one
was
here.
your new one.
I know, but I've got one that I've got listed as a new one, and I don't have that in.
It just got left out. It's there tonight now.
Oh, it's on, okay, put it in tonight.
It's at the end.
It was in the first one.
As number one.
Somehow dropped out.
When I went to the new one, and I took the old one and said, okay, there's go. Now I got this one with everything in it, and that's not true.
That's not.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Not going crazy here.
Okay. Any other discussion before we start on our findings? Okay, we'll start with the general findings.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
What, go through each
Right.
one on each set of findings is what we're going to do? Okay.
We're going to end up having to do it that way.
Okay.
Okay, your general findings. A, or number 1.
Good.
On this one.
On the
I think it's going to be easier if we go through all of ours
Ours first.
and then go through all of
Instead of
theirs.
trying to go
Right,
with-
instead of going back and forth.
That's how I got it in my mind. So.
Okay, number 2,
Good.
3,
Good.
4,
Good.
5, 6,
Good.
7,
Good.
8,
Good.
9,
Good.
you're hesitating, Chuck. 10,
Well, I went through these cross-referencing,
That's what I did.
and
I went.
so I'm trying to ignore what I've got over here on the other side.
in other words, you're going to go back and tell me to get rid of 9 or 10.
I may add something to it or improve it.
Okay.
That's fine. I mean, I think that makes sense. My understanding is, Perry, you're going through first the general one here, then
Right.
you're going to look at the other,
Right.
see what you, and then finish it
Yeah.
up that way.
Yeah.
And we can add or
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
I did it the other way. I went number 1 against number 1, so it's going to take us a while.
Okay. Number 10,
Good.
11,
Good.
12,
Good.
13,
Good.
14,
Good.
15,
Good.
16,
Good.
17,
Good.
and is there any we want to add to ours?
Well, we don't know. We haven't looked at the other one yet.
Okay.
Some of them might have been looking at the other side.
All right, let's go to the ones provided by,
Well, I'll take that back. No, we're not.
oh, this one's actually nice to put a nice little right
Now, going back and forth between two sets of documents on this particular machine is an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I like the iPad, except for this application has been a nightmare.
Well, yes, but so it is.
This works a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. I
I
followed
did the
you.
same thing. I got copies.
Okay, the general findings. Number 1,
This is true.
That's true.
Yep. That's
okay. A, or do you want to just do 1 through,
Well, you go through A. I think this is.
okay.
That's true also.
A,
That's good.
That's good.
okay. B,
This is true.
Oh,
That's okay.
okay, and I just lost it. I like this better if I can stand it up than I don't do this. Okay, 10.1.1.1. Or do we want to consider that part as B? B?
Thank you.
Okay, number 2 wants us to refer to ours, number 3 the same, number 4 the same. Number 5,
Yes, and this one here puts into the Rose Hill, unless that's somewhere else. The Rose Hill, the Hopefield, Road,
I can't hear you, sir, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I like this one because it gets into the Rose Hill and Hopewell and Gould and some of the other ones that are in comparison with Cove.
As far as the size, John,
Yes.
and yeah, okay.
Yes, I don't know whether that's somewhere else, but
It's a fact, whether it's relevant or not.
It
Yeah.
is a fact.
Right.
So it's okay. This is just general
So
findings.
do you want to put that in our,
You can put that in.
okay?
Well, hold on, aren't you gonna put these other ones in also?
Add it.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Are we gonna add the ones that we approved to the general plan?
That's my understanding of what you're doing.
Okay, all of them, okay.
Okay.
You're asking if you wanna put that
Anything we
in.
agree
or not.
with.
Okay,
We're going to add two.
okay, okay.
We do like you, Debbie, really. Okay, number 6, references ours. Number 7.
It's a fact.
That's a fact.
Okay, number 8.
yep, that's fact.
I think that's fact.
Are we sure that that's factual, that the families would stay there indefinitely? I mean, that was a question I had as far as the use. Are there,
That was kind of left in limbo.
okay, all right. We were gonna say this is fact then?
If you don't, it's something you don't know, then you just cross that provision out. So if you think that you don't know that it's true, I wouldn't add it.
Crossed out, I don't think it was perfectly clear. I think it was implied that staff would be there on a permanent basis.
But it's not clear on either this one or that one, because we don't have a definition of what indefinite is. It's a hard thing, so I guess we'll get there sometime. But what you're saying is cross it off if we're not certain, or if we don't.
Yeah, but if you're not certain that that's part of the record and part of the presentation before, you probably shouldn't have it on there.
Okay, number 9 refers to our findings. Number 10.
I've got all kinds of problems. with
Yeah,
that.
10 is totally
Ken is
different.
coming to conclusions that I don't feel are warranted.
Okay, so we want to delete number 10?
10.
Okay.
Hang on, I want to talk about that, because I think that has some legal importance behind it. It's not just a statement of somebody's interpretation of it. It has a Supreme Court ruling behind it. Now, I think you may say that the Planning Commission finds that, well, we might find that they've recently caused the infirm to be that. Well, I don't know. We've agreed already that that's the meaning we're going to go with. But I think it has a statement. It's a statement of fact.
No, I don't agree. I think that what your problem is, and that's why I don't include in the findings of fact cases here, because cases are interpreted differently. I mean, any reference to a case in your findings of fact probably should be eliminated regardless if it's inserted in the findings.
So then where does our definition of infirm come from? Where would that come
Because
from?
the law states they use dictionary definitions. So it's just
Okay, so
regular-
this is just a dictionary definition.
Right. Yeah.
So you're saying that court case didn't have a dictionary definition?
No, the court case may be addressing something completely different. You know, in this case, in its opinion, it does. So it's not part of what you're looking at here.
See, the implication of this 10, the way it's written, feeble or weak in body or health, especially because of age. I think the case that was written in was probably an age case, and the court emphasized that to make sure that age was brought in as a possible health issue. But mental health, for me, is just as important as physical health. And the push on this, the interpretation that they're trying to come to, is that mental health is not a health issue.
And more importantly, for zoning purposes, if you don't have a term defined, The dictionary is where you have to look. That's the law on it. This is something else here, based on some other case.
And is there a particular dictionary you look at?
And you can look at a variety of them. You can look online.
Do we know which dictionary this came from?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't.
Oh, do we know which dictionary this came from?
I think it's in, Steve, isn't it in the, on the exhibits list?
Yeah, it's 161 through 165. One of those. There's a number of dictionaries listed there.
What this is pushing for is saying that mental health is not an infirmity. Someone who is mentally unhealthy, that is an infirmity. That's what this is pushing for.
See, I look at it differently. I don't think this is sweeping to say that that's every interpretation of infirm, but I would say that in accordance with what we have here, it could conceivably be the definition. It's not necessarily, you can't necessarily say, well, because they didn't include a mental disability, that they don't care about mental disability, they're just going to have...
No, but what they're trying to say is that a mental health issue is not an infirmity. And it has to be physical or age-related. And that's not, I don't come to that conclusion from what's been presented.
Well, I'm just saying you're expanding it then to say, well, infirmity should include that, and if that were a definition, I would totally agree with you. I think it's not a bad thing to be there, but it's possible that it's not in there and it wasn't included in there. I don't know what the original intent of the people who put this thing together, so this definition to me is as good as the other definition. Now, I understand you say legally we should go with the dictionary. Well, I understand that.
That's what you have to do. I mean, in this case, that's citing her, and that's why you don't cite cases and findings here, because the cases are based on completely different facts and different aspects of the law. And this one is, it certainly is. And that's why the law says if you don't have a defined, you need a definition. You go to a dictionary.
So in one hand, we're saying, and don't use these cases, but we're actually basing the way we approach this whole thing on this case that you provided with Anchor Steel.
Yeah, that's the difference. That's correct. There is a difference, okay? The difference is that case addressed how you view zoning, just like there are laws that address how you view zoning, okay? And my job is to tell you what the law is and how you use zoning, not to say go use whatever law you happen to find, and if it has nothing to do with the case on hand, go ahead and use it. That's the problem. That's the problem with this one here.
So the definitions that we have from the dictionary that you guys used is what we should be using.
Yeah, or you can go online yourself right now and go take a look at a definition. If you don't like the ones that are, they're randomly sampled online. There are other definitions online. There's a variety of definitions out there in various dictionaries.
Okay, and here in this case, they're saying citing a dictionary definition. This court case cited a dictionary definition saying feeble or weak in mind or health, especially because of age. That's the one this court used as it. We don't know where they got it.
Yeah.
We know where we got ours.
And you can go and you can pick some other ones. I mean, go just pick a dictionary definition, and then if there's an agreement on that definition as it applies here, you can use it. If there's not, you have a discussion and come up with a dictionary definition that you think is appropriate. That's why findings are merely as a guidance. Okay, I have to guide you as to which way and how you approach this here. So you get to make the choices as to which dictionary definition you wish to choose to put that in there.
Well, again, if the Supreme Court is citing a dictionary definition, why can't we use that?
Because it doesn't say where it came from. You can pick any other one that you want. The case also has something to do with, what my suggestion is you eliminate the case portion of it and then pick a dictionary definition that you believe is appropriate.
Peter, take a look at...
I'm not going to argue with you, Bridget, on here.
It's Random House. It's cited on page 14 of my book.
So they can go look at Random House. There's a variety of dictionaries. We picked several of them on there. You can pick whichever ones you want. You can do that right now. That's why you have
Yeah,
internet
let's,
access.
let's take a look at it.
Go ahead.
Let's
Start your
pull it
discussion.
up.
Can we pull up our own house dictionary and just see what that says?
I just don't want the case in here. I don't care.
That's-
I don't care what dictionary definition is good.
All right.
So should we just delete number 10,
Well, I
not
think
use
we're
it?
going to look at some
Wait,
definitions.
wait and hear what we've got.
You can modify it.
We could take out, I mean, I don't care about the Michigan Supreme Court. I mean, we could just say it was a dictionary
Yeah.
definition cited which defined infirmity as feeble or weak in body or health, especially because of age.
Okay, so if we crossed off the Michigan Supreme Court dictionary definition, unless you can find it from Random House, what you're saying is we could use that definition, the one we have that we had previously, and look through that and see which.
Yeah, you choose.
You have to choose the exact one, or can you look
No,
at?
you can
Okay,
choose,
both,
just
okay.
use whatever dictionary you want to use. Go ahead.
But does it have to be word from that dictionary? We
From the one that you pick, yeah.
Okay, all right. So okay,
So Webster definition, if you
and
look
then
at
Random
Webster,
House.
I have Webster. It says having a condition of weakness or illness that usually lasts for a long time and is caused especially by old age.
Okay, so that's quite a difference in this definition.
Yeah, that is different. And that's why I brought it up. Because
So that's Webster.
that's Webster.
You have Random House there, Steve. I don't know if you
I
get
was just looking at the same one.
God, this technical world we live in.
That makes it easy to do it.
Now, Peter, should we be having, at some point, do we have some discussion as to which one of these we
Yep.
are going to go with? Is
That's
that
right.
right? Okay, I got it.
We have Oxford dictionaries.
How about Random House?
Do you not want to hear Oxford?
Hey, I do, but I mean, we'll see if we can get 3 of them and decide, or 3 or 4, whatever you can get quick, we'll decide. That's a big issue, I think.
OxfordDictionary.com says the first definition is not physically or mentally strong, comma, especially through age or illness.
I like that.
Okay, so we
I'm
got
sorry, what was the other one?
Webster.
Random House?
Never had so much pressure typing on this. It may take me just a little bit longer. I'm finding the free dictionary online, and it says infirmity, the state or quality of being infirm, physical weakness or debility, frailty.
I've got the Oxford. Oxford says that.
We got Oxford.
Oh, you have Oxford?
We're looking for Random, and he's got a new one there that we're kind of just reading.
Okay, this one is from. This is not physically or mentally strong, especially.
That we just had
You just
there.
read that one.
Steve, what's the one you have? What does that say?
Sorry, I just went back.
You know, in the interest of time, I mean,
Yeah.
we can move on and keep going and then come back to it.
Okay.
Well, I think infirmity is one of the keys to the
I
whole.
think so.
What is an infirmity? Does it include mental infirmity? It's going to be something we're going to come back and hang our head on before we're through.
I don't think we can go very far without finding out what this means. I mean, we've got 2 definitions that don't say mental, and we've got a couple that say physically or mentally. So I think we got to.
Well, did you read the free dictionary?
Yeah.
Weak in body or mind, especially from old age or disease.
Another one because it includes mental.
I don't know, I'm not finding Random House. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. The freedictionary.com is citing Random House Kernerman Webster's College Dictionary. That's the one I read to you. Number one definition of infirmity is the physical weakness or ailment. Their example is the infirmities of age. Number two is the quality or state of being infirm, lack of strength. Their third definition is a moral weakness or failing.
I don't think that one applies.
That one's not I guess we amongst ourselves have to decide which one we like.
There's more. Collins English Dictionary. Infirmity is the word they're defining. Number one, the state or quality of being infirm. Number two, physical weakness or debility, frailty. Number three, a moral flaw or failing.
Those two.
Okay, what was wrong with what was in 10? What was the problem with it?
It's trying to exclude mental infirmity.
I don't see it that way.
I do.
I see it as health. You have physical health and you have mental health. It doesn't define
But
physical health and it
if you
doesn't
go on
define
and follow their arguments, everywhere else they use them, they're saying that mental problems are not an infirmity. That is key to their argument. Concept.
Yeah, it does.
And the minute you accept the definition that excludes mental problems as being an infirmity, then there's a pretty good argument to follow that
Oh, yeah.
from there.
I understand. I know where you're going.
We have about 6 definitions that are split. 3 or 4 say physically.
All we have to do is pick one.
Yeah, that's the hard part. You got any more there, Steve? I mean, we can't see them, so we don't know.
We really need a research
Well, why
assistant
wouldn't-
who's probably a freshman or sophomore in high school to handle
I
this
can't
type
hear
of.
you, sir.
It was just an aside, really, it doesn't have to.
If we include a definition, then, I mean, why, or we even include both definitions, why wouldn't it be up to the individual commissioners to decide which one you're going to base your decision on?
I don't quite understand what the question is.
I'm saying you could, you know, if we rewrite this, so you say it's going to be infirm, feeble, or weak in body or health. Okay. So I got that decision. I have a thought process in mind. I'm going to vote the way I want, and Chuck's going to vote the way he wants, and you're going to vote the way you want. Based upon it's the same way as anything we do. You have your body of information either way, and you're gonna make a decision.
Yeah.
So what we have to do, you're saying, is pick the 4 or 5 that we looked at and us decide as a group which one that we want to use in number 10. That's where we're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of commissioners choose the definition will be the definition you move forward with.
Are you going to say then that the majority of the commissioners are going to pick the definition that all of us will have to use? Or as John says, each of us will use our own definition? In that case, we're speaking in different languages.
Well, it may be that if you're following, different commissioners are following different paths, then that would still be consistent all the way through. You may have a 7-3 vote on the standard or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's part of it. It's not, there's no absolute rule. There has to be unanimity, and there generally isn't in many cases.
But you're saying even if the vote says that we're going to use a certain one, we don't.
That's the finding that has to stick in
Okay,
there.
but that doesn't mean we have to use that as we go through because we already voted on it, or does it?
Well, at the end it does. Okay, at the end, if you're going to vote consistently, even though there may be dissension among planning commission members as they go through all the different findings, if in the end the planning commission members either found that all the standards have been met or some have not been met, then in the end you have to have a single motion that matches that either they get it or they don't get it.
I think I'm in a position where I basically don't like the idea of looking at each of the separate parts. And I said that right from the get-go. But the law says I have to. So that's, I'm going by the law is saying, and that's defining what I'm going to have to.
Yep, but within the confines of the law, you have discretionary decisions to make, and here's one of them.
I don't have to like it. I just have to follow it.
That's right, but you also have some discretion. And here you have competing definitions, and you have discretion to decide which one you wish to use.
At this point, can we include a couple?
If you want to, yeah, if they're consistent.
If they say the same, they're not.
Okay.
So there isn't two that we could.
Well, then you just put them in there and move on.
I think we should put two conflicting decisions that they're definitions in there and move on, or we'll be
You
here.
can do that in the general findings. That's fine.
So we've got the one that includes
What was free dictionary? Do you have that one?
Webster you read, which didn't include mental. The Oxford said physically or mental, so we could use
Yeah.
Webster and Oxford if that's what you want
For
to
the
use.
Oxford.
Let me read the three from Merriam-Webster that I have here. beta.merriam-webster.com. The first one says, of poor or deteriorated vitality, especially feeble from age.
Let's see, we're in.
The number 2 is weak of mind, will, or character. Number 3 is not solid or stable.
And that's which one?
Merriam-Webster.
Okay, now that's not the same one you related when you
No.
pulled it. That is absolutely completely different.
Yeah. That's the internet for you.
Herein lies the problem with definitions. You know, we always say, well, let's go back, we'll clarify this by making another definition, and I can tell you it's an endless tale. You'll chase your tail as long as you want to, making more definitions around definitions.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we include one that includes specifically the mental health that's very clear and one that doesn't, and move on.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion to include
I just don't want that one still.
two definitions, one that includes mental health and one that does not include mental health. All in favor?
Specifically. Because it says health.
Aye.
No.
My motion is specifically says mental health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, with that definition, we keep 10 then?
No.
Just keep it as
I
Keep it all.
delete the last,
Where they talk about their definition of infirm, you take that out.
right.
Whoa, we just say, I thought the concern was the Michigan Supreme Court, but then they're citing a definition here that I thought the process was we have this definition, and your individual commissioners could argue their case and vote with it however they felt like that was. I don't think you can go back in time and say we picked this definition and that was what people thought about back then and that's what we're going to use now. I don't think so. I think we got to go in from now and keep moving ahead.
The problem is if we would have to be able to read all those definitions and make a motion and support that we use certain ones. Is it reasonable to have both of those in here and move on, or is it important enough to make a vote?
Well, you already made a motion that consists of two different definitions.
Okay, so but the motion, now he's trying to see if we're going to include that in the findings.
This is a third.
Okay, we don't want the third,
No,
right?
we just want to. The motion was
This
2.
10 is a third,
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
10 is the
interpretation.
second. 10, no, wait on 10, I don't know. Yeah, 10 is there's one here, number 8, and one here, number 10, where you say.
No, but the motion made by Michael had to do with the definitions provided by Steve. Those were the two
Exactly, and
definitions.
and we
not
crossed
what-
out Supreme Court
That's what
in
the
this
motion
one.
was. That's what was adopted.
What he's telling us is get rid of the Supreme Court dictionary definition because we don't know where it came from. Now we're going to have two that we can decide on in the future when we can review them to see which one we like. And Chuck's comment now is, does all of 10 go in? Do we take Supreme Court out and move it along? What portion of this do we include or not include? Right?
That's right.
And it's a
We'll get that's Random House dictionary definition of infirmity. So, what do you want?
But we did not see that when he pulled up Random House. It didn't say exactly this.
I didn't hear him say
Well,
that.
he pulled that one out, or I thought he did.
I didn't hear Random House.
Well, he did. Okay.
Look at that.
We need to delete part of this. We don't necessarily have to delete all of it.
You can keep,
I say you just not have a Michigan Supreme Court citing.
But then we have three definitions. Do you want three? I mean, we had a motion to keep two.
What was the Random House one?
Well, we had a motion to keep one that specifically said mental, and the other one did not specifically say mental. We don't have them yet. We don't know which ones we're going to get.
I could be okay with that.
Okay.
I would propose you keep the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 lines, and drop it after that.
Where it says the planning
Where it
commission.
goes, the planning commission also finds that the ordinance does not define, well, you can leave, but it's not defined the term infirm.
And start with however. and
Start with however
Delete
and
however
delete.
on, because that's where you're trying to tie it back to the Supreme Court decision.
So what was the definition then that we were going to include?
Two that
There are going to be
read.
two that they're going to
Okay.
pull out. One, we're
Yeah,
not going to be able to
Steve
get them
has
right now. They're going to have to print them
Yeah.
off, and
Yeah,
we're
that's
not
fine.
ever going to get through this tonight anyway, so it's probably something we're
Yeah,
going
let's move on. I'm fine.
Okay, so we agree on number 10 that we delete from however the planning commission finds on.
to really be careful with.
Yeah, what about the last sentence?
I think that should stay in.
Hmm?
Where it says that the applicant represents the licensing will not be required.
Mm-hmm.
No,
That was what
I
was
don't
said.
agree with that. The applicant in testimony
Said that it would be
it's-
depending on,
they would follow any necessary licensing requirements and probably would have, including up to and including applying for accreditation, which was over and above the licensing. That's what they
I
said.
just want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
So this is not a fact.
Yeah, the only thing that's a little confusing is that they had a statement early that said, no, they weren't. And then when they came back, they were very careful to say, we will apply for any applicable Michigan laws and apply and follow those. But if they should pick a course of treatment that, let's say, does not require an application, are they still allowed then, or do they fall under saying, oh, well, we followed the rule and guideline exactly like we said to you we were going to?
But this statement says they will not be required, and that isn't what they're saying. So I say that statement has to come out.
Yeah, I don't mind that statement coming out, but I'm saying simply putting another statement in there saying they've
The state isn't going
agreed.
to license them if there isn't any basis to license them.
And I agree, and they may, I'm no expert in this whole thing, so all I'm saying is they may be able to structure their operations such that they don't require one. And I'm not saying anything against that because I sometimes don't like all kinds of regulations either. But if that were the case, then we have we have a convalescent facility in that area that's not licensed. And it is approved by us. at that point.
It's approved if we don't place the requirement in there that they have to follow any necessary licensing procedures determined by their actual operation. And I would assume that if we approve any of this, that that's going to be one of the conditions that's going to be in there.
Yeah, that doesn't protect us 100%, though, is all my point is. We could end up with a facility that doesn't require a Michigan regulation, and they could run it in
I
accordance with
require
what we
that you
just
don't
said.
run across against a red light, but that doesn't mean you're not able to do it.
No, I'm saying they could do it legally. Not you run a red light, that's illegal. I'm saying they could probably run this thing illegally. Illegally, I don't think they would do that. But, they run it legally, but they wouldn't require a Michigan license based upon the type of clientele that they service. That's all I'm
You
saying.
can't get around that, though.
That's what the law is. I mean, if
That's
it's
what the
required,
law-
it's
That's what the law
required.
says. If the law says that if you're doing this, you need a license, and they're doing that, then they're going to have a license. If they're not doing that, they're not going to have that license.
That's correct, but then that could potentially have impacts, because then when you get into the other findings of fact, you start to describe, okay, people have concerns over safety, they could have concerns over different issues that only maybe licensing might be able to take care of. And that's that screening the type of applicants they can get, the ability for them to be able to screen people. We begin to have a little different avenue of expectation and maybe concern in these other areas that I might not have if I say I know they're going to have a license. I mean, I don't know.
They don't
Just the way I
know.
feel.
They don't know if they're going to have a license. That's what they have said is that all depends. They can't go to the state to talk about licensing until they get approval here. So they don't even know what licenses are necessary. They can't tell us.
The state can't tell.
I'm not
The
sure
state,
if I
the
Is
state,
that correct?
No.
the state did. There is a document in there. It's one of the exhibits. The state looked at what they did present, and the state indicated that it probably was going to be an adult foster care facility.
Exactly.
Now, if we don't approve some portions of the thing, then it might not be able to be considered an adult foster care facility. I can see where that is the problem that they're looking at when they say that they can't get the state to tell them they need this license until we act. Okay. But if we approve all or a portion of this, then they're going to have to go to the state, and the state will tell them, based on what we approve, that has to be this license, that license, or it doesn't have to have any license.
Exactly.
If it doesn't have to have any license, then the state is saying that there probably aren't the factors there that would require more safety precautions.
I agree.
So, I don't see where the problem is.
All right, 11.
So what are we striking? Let's do.
Okay, we're going on number 10. We start with however the planning commission finds,
Okay.
and we're getting rid of the rest of it.
Where was that one you were on?
Number 10.
Oh, 10, okay. Yeah, okay.
Number 11.
11's good.
Yeah.
Number 12.
Well, first statement is not true. The ordinance does provide for what is really an analogy in
The same general
in
period.
9.3.22.
Right.
That is, you can call it an analogy, or you can call it something similar to, but that's what an analogy is.
That would be true enforced, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what 9.3.22 is. But to say that the ordinance doesn't provide anything like that, the ordinance does in fact two different areas. But Forest Ag and then one of the protection districts. It's in there twice.
Yeah.
It's not in Lake and Stream, but it's in twice.
It's not in, there's not one like that in Lake and Stream.
There's
in
not
Forest
one
Area.
like that in Lake and Stream, but there is in
It's
Forest
a
Area.
similar use that
Yes.
is determined by the.
Yes.
Okay, A is part of number 12.
Yeah.
B.
I don't think this falls back on the statements that Peter made, and it rolls back on the Tuscarora Township's objections to this and to the they're going along with the Griswold Mountain and Peter's differentiation between the zoning issue and a rezoning. Zoning use and a rezoning. And this is what we're looking at is a determination of zoning use, and we're not looking at a rezoning. Therefore, A and B are really not applicable.
I don't agree with that. I believe that the Tuscarora Planning Commission should be given weight. They have a master plan that we've approved. We're supposed to take a look at their master plan and blend that and use that whenever we can, whether it's the type of decision that you talked about, I can't remember the term, that you said this wasn't a such decision and we couldn't use that. But I think we have to place some weight on what they had. It's their master plan. Chapter 4 of our master plan said we should be using their master plan in reviewing plans and those kinds of things.
I think the language, and if you could pull it up, has to do with when you're drafting ordinance language, which is the legislative act provision on there. Steve will pull that back up.
But I feel that commission met, discussed this, felt that it wasn't compatible. At least it should be in the general findings or something.
You can include in the general findings.
Because I think, we worked with them. We had meetings down there. Why did we waste all that time if their master plan needs?
Exactly. To add a ton of money on the master plan, and we said we would place that master plan, and that master plan was going to be the roadmap for future planning. Essentially, if you read that back, then it's going to be the master plan for future zoning ordinances.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the Tuscarora Township, we also said we wanted to go to the townships because they were closest to the people and represented the people the best. Now, what we're saying,
Except for Tuscarora has their own master plan.
yeah, I understand. Let me finish. Now, they developed a master plan. We accepted that master plan, okay, and that master plan is in effect, and it should have weight because they are the closest to those people. I'm a step away. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't live in Tuscarora Township. They do. They are responsible. They are representatives of those people. And so I think they do have credence and they do have weight.
Steve, did you find
Yeah, there's 3 references to the master plan and the zoning ordinance, and I think John's points are right on as far as how your master plan applies to a zoning ordinance amendment. That's exactly right. The master plan, in reference to the actual regulations within the zoning ordinance, there's in your open space subdivision purpose statement, there is a goal that what they do would conform to the master plan. That's not relevant here because they're not doing open space. In site plan review, also in the purpose statement, I'll just read the whole thing, it's a few sentences. The intent of this section is to provide for consultation and cooperation between the developer and the county so that both parties might realize maximum utilization of land and minimum adverse effects upon the surrounding land uses, consistent with the requirements and purposes of this ordinance. Through the application of the following provisions, the attainment of the master plan of Cheboygan County will be assured and the county will develop in an orderly fashion. Then you go on for site plan review and approval requirements and that type of thing. So they're more general statements. Also, the third reference to the master plan also in site plan review. And this seems more to be an error in reference, but it is in the zoning ordinance. Letter I of the standards for granting site plan approval is the arrangement of public or common ways for vehicular and pedestrian circulation shall respect the pattern of existing or planned streets and pedestrian or bicycle pathways in the area. Streets and drives which are part of an existing or planned street pattern which serves adjacent development shall be of a width appropriate to the traffic volume they will carry and shall have a dedicated right-of-way equal to that specified in the master plan. I think the reference probably is intended to say if the master plan says that your neighborhood should have a grid pattern, you should follow that and move forward. But there aren't street width regulations in the master plan. That's probably an old reference. So those are the three.
Can you look at the one where the one you missed there that made that it's recommended that we use their master plan whenever applicable?
That's in our master plan.
Okay, wherever that is, that's an important issue because that's what we're saying here.
Right, and that references rezonings or amendments to the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
you should reference the master plan.
Find that,
While he's finding that, what he said though, and he quoted it, was it would be consistent with the zoning ordinance. What we're looking at is the use now under the zoning ordinance as it is. So we're trying to find something that's consistent with the ordinance the way it's written. We're not looking at a revision to the ordinance, an amendment to the ordinance, a change in the ordinance, a rezoning. We're looking at the ordinance the way it is right now. And that said that we should try to follow that.
And Tuscarora is saying they felt that it was not compatible.
No. Well,
their letter says it right here.
It's not compatible with the zoning,
With the land use.
with the land use plan. But it is, we have to look at the zoning. That is the law. That's what we're trying to follow. Not with a land use plan that may change that zoning in the future.
No, that's a good point.
We may decide next month to rezone that whole area to industrial. I don't know. But
Maybe this will help clarify.
all right.
Maybe this will help clarify. Just as an example, I got a phone call from a Tuscarora Township resident after our last meeting. He said, "What happened? Our master plan isn't worth anything anymore?" I said, "No, let me clarify. It's worth a lot, just as the county and the township master plan, when making zoning amendment decisions, are the documents to review, and those carry a lot of weight. And because we reference the township master plan, that carries a great deal of weight in making amendments to the zoning ordinance."
Correct.
So, and I think Peter's reference at the last meeting when he stated that had everything to do with just the regulations of the ordinance. And he just said that. So.
I mean, the ordinance is what it is. You have to follow the ordinance as written. The reference in the county master plan is that if you're going to make some changes in the ordinance, if you're going to do a legislative act, whether it's a rezoning or otherwise, then you need to consider the Tuscarora master plan. That's what's in your, as well as the county master plan. But for specific applications before you, the ordinance is it.
Okay, how about if we put that in the general findings that they made that decision then?
You can do that, yeah, that they made the decision and then reference it. That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Mike, did you still want me to read that section?
No.
Okay.
I think we just got to be careful with the fact that we're trying to follow the law as it's written, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, well, I didn't make that up. I mean, we're recommended to use it, and you made it clear.
Okay,
so
in B it says that after review, Craig Waldron made a motion that Heritage Cove Farm Plan is not compatible with the future land use map. It's already, that's part of the findings.
in our set.
No.
That's okay. So we're in. It's in there. We're safe. Okay.
As long as we're adding those to our set, yes.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, 13.
I've got, I don't have problems with a lot of it, but when they get down to about 2/3 of the way down, it says the Planning Commission further finds that Applicant's September 22nd, 2015 letter also proposes a garden and greenhouse on the portion lying within the Lake Stream Protection District, but fails to provide the provisions of the ordinance in support of the proposed uses. However, the applicant does not seek a reasonable accommodation for the same.
Does seek.
Hmm?
Does seek.
Does. I think the garden and greenhouse the garden is allowed under 10.2.2. The greenhouse is specifically authorized 2 other places, but I would question whether that is not allowed under the Right to Farm Act. But the garden is specifically authorized in the Lake and Stream Protection District.
I see it in the I see it in the ag forest. It says greenhouses and nurseries. You're saying it's also in the
greenhouse is in actually resource conservation, which is the other place where the catch-all phrase is. Now I remember. And the forest ag.
Does greenhouse fall within right to farm?
Right, it's being done commercially.
I missed that.
To provide that the activity is being done commercially on a commercial basis, the answer is yes. It's got to be right to farm. And gardening is use permitted by right in the PLS. So.
okay, good. Thank you.
So you're saying, Chuck, you agree with everything?
Well, I just got problems with that
Okay,
line
that
there.
planning commission starts right after Exhibit 154,
Yeah.
but you agree with not being allowed. I mean, that's in the ordinance, so that's not a.
So basically, it's the fails to provide the provision.
Yeah. They don't have to. It's in.
Yeah.
I don't think they have to cite everything that's there by right.
But we already cited 1022. Yeah. So if we strike that sentence, everything else.
You could just put in there after that that they don't provide it, but it is allowed under 10.2.
Sure.
And the greenhouse, as long as it's commercial, is provided under the right to farm.
Right to farm.
Who's making those changes?
I'm sure
I'm
that.
trying to. You are. Debbie,
Well, I'm
because
sure that
there's a
Debbie
lot
will
of that.
pick them up. Yeah. Okay, 14. Whoops.
I would like some clarification on 13's a large one. Can you clarify exactly what's staying in?
Can we clarify what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm asking if the planning commission can clarify exactly what's staying in.
Everything is staying
but
in.
the planning commission further finds that sentence. And we're going to put in 1022 and right to farm. And then we go on and keep the final statement. Because there is no catch-all in Lake and Stream.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everybody set on 13? 14?
14's okay.
Okay, 15 refers to R, 16 refers to R, 17.
I think there's a numbering problem there. go 15, 16.
Yeah, and then the next one is 17.
17. Are we going back to Peters at 17?
No, that's her.
No, that's very.
No, that's hers.
It's hers.
Okay.
These are in addition to.
Well, okay. All right.
So are we going to agree with the Webster definition of a duplex? I don't care. I mean, that's not an issue, I don't think.
Well, you don't have to keep everything if you don't think it's needed, okay? I mean, it's not just a pile on. You want to make sure that whatever you keep is relevant to what you're doing. You feel it is, it is.
We don't define, the planning commission doesn't define the duplexes.
Okay.
And they're just trying to clarify that, so I don't have a problem with
Yeah, I
that.
think this
Well, duplex was one of the
issues.
issues.
Yeah,
same with them.
Cabin
I
colony.
know. Big
Well,
issue.
and I like the definition.
Yep.
Okay, 18.
It's only our ordinance.
Definition.
19.
An interesting one.
Unfortunately,
According to the
one
letter
of
of the
their
law.
country club, one of their things is country club.
Their analogies.
Right.
I was looking at 20. Were you looking at 19?
We're still working
Still
on
in
19.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were only going to do 20.
I mean, it's been stretched on that.
Okay, 20.
I think that's got to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
21.
Yes. It's okay.
Chuck is really debating this one. I can tell.
What's that?
Chuck is really debating just by his facial expressions.
Yeah, I think
Okay. Are there any additional general findings that the planning commission would like to add?
I'd like to throw one in there that the primary use of the entire application is for a therapeutic farm, which is, if not analogous to a convalescent home, it certainly matches the definition and could be considered under 9322.
I don't think that that will tend to make us look at that as an entire project like you proposed the
No,
first
it's
time.
just
That's
saying
your
that the
intent,
primary use of the entire application is for a therapeutic farm facility, which is a convalescent home under our definition.
I don't know if I'd stretch it that far.
Then you're going to have to come up with something else that's in the regulation that is closer to it than convalescent home. And I'm saying if it isn't exactly, then the closest you come in is push it in 9322 and say that that's the closest thing in the regulation that it matches.
Thank you.
We have to make a decision sooner or later.
Let's not do it in the general plan.
What do you want to do?
When we get to that finding, that's the use. that we consider with the license and so on.
No, you're not considering whether it requires a license.
A convalescent home does.
May. What's your
Those are big,
interpretation?
yeah, those are big terms.
Is a convalescent, the definition in our regulation, does it require it to have a license or capable of it?
I would view it as capable of, because it's a requirement of whatever the state law requires. That's why you have it in there. So if licensing is required, that's what it's for. If you don't think that it's close enough, then you match it up to the 9 point.
3.22.
3.22, yeah.
I went through every single thing we've got in the regulation anywhere, and I can't find anything that comes closer than convalescent home. And if you don't say it's on point in every aspect, then it's certainly close. And you'd consider it under 9322. I ask anybody else to find something that's closer to it, because I spent hours looking at everything in there.
Well,
In every way I can think of to look at it.
it's not a nursing home. It's not adult foster care, because the convalescent term implies the process of recovery, right? And with that very thing, it really, that's as close as I can come.
So you don't believe it's close to a convalescent home?
Oh, I do.
But not there, you say, not exactly.
Well, but that's the closest thing we can come to under 9322 to compare it to.
You can't have exclusionary zoning. You can't say that, okay, this is an elephant, and we don't have any place an elephant can go in the regulation, because then you're going to have to come up with someplace. So you got to look at what's the closest to it.
And they've talked about convalescent homes, so have we. So it is.
Whether we need to put it in there as a general finding, I mean.
It doesn't make a difference, I guess. It's pretty specific.
For better or worse, the discussion's in the minutes now, so.
I'd say put both of them in, convalescent and 922, 9322.
That's what finding. It was either convalescent home or it was as close as we could come under 9322.
Okay. Any other general findings that we feel we need to add?
There's one other finding I'd like to throw in there. There's a lot of discussion in a lot of different places about the fact that this is a residential area. The use may be residential, but the property is zoned lake and stream protection. The only areas in the general facility that have an underlying residential zoning are the platted subdivisions.
And these properties are not within.
And these are not platted properties. These are not part of a platted subdivision. Therefore, the underlying use is still lake and stream, which is not a residential zoning
Per se.
So, I just wanted clear that we recognize the fact that this is zoned lake and stream protection, but it is not zoned residential. There are areas nearby that are, the underlying zoning is, by definition, it's a platted subdivision, therefore it is residential by our regulations. But this isn't part of that.
Do we need that in there? Is that,
You can put that in there.
I mean, if you see it as, I guess it's a factor of the subdivision.
There's nothing that prevents you from putting
What's
it in there.
your intent there?
The intent is the fact that people keep saying that this is a residential area, residentially zoned area. And the use in close by is that it's zoned residential and it is residential. But this is not zoned residential.
This is lake and stream protection.
This is Lake and Stream Protection
where
District,
residents are allowed.
where residents are allowed. Just
Okay,
as
I would
we're-
say if we clear that up and say it's zoned lake and stream, but uses are residential.
No,
Adjacent uses.
this particular parcel
Okay,
is
but
not.
adjacent uses, let's put adjacent.
They're adjacent, not immediately adjacent. Parcels immediately adjacent or not, but close by, there's platted subdivisions. Grandview Beach,
But if you just say that lake and stream protection allows residential
yeah.
Uses.
uses, that covers it.
I think so too, but historically, most of that area is developed as, even though it's zoned lake and stream, it's developed as a good course.
Yes.
As long as we indicate that in there, that's fine.
I'm just.
I know you're
Well,
covering them all.
having the word residential, it kind of means something.
Right,
different.
and
And
I
that's
think-
what Chuck's coming.
That's what I'm saying.
And I think the
It's a fine
general
distinction.
public feel because there's 5 houses there that's residential, when
That's right.
it might even be commercial.
And we keep running into that.
We do. It'll clear it up as long as we indicate that the general use, like we do in some of our findings, is to the north residential.
Would it help to reference the purpose statement for the Lake and Stream zoning district?
Yes.
Just a quick
I
statement
think it's
here. It
actually
says,
in here.
It's in there.
it becomes apparent that there is considerable pressure for development of waterfront property for homes, tourism, and recreation. That's the only reference to residential. If that helps to reference that.
I think so.
I think it helps in the confusion as we discuss it. I think,
Well, the
I
Lake
don't
and
know if it has a
Stream-
huge bearing on the general
Well,
findings.
the Lake and Stream Protection District really tries to preclude a denser housing
Right.
use. Just the fact that we've got 100-foot wide lot restriction indicates that, and the setbacks from the water. It's a protection district, which is trying to put some brakes on the residential use in that area.
Or any use that would increase densities
Or an
and
increased use,
population.
yes.
or
It's a
people,
protection.
Sure.
Or
I
open
don't
development.
disagree with that.
Okay, are we happy with our general findings?
I think we got enough.
I'm sure. Okay,
37 minutes to go.
We get a break here for 5 minutes.
as much as we need to go through yet. Under specific findings under section 18.7.
On the,
Yeah, we're on there.
We're back on ours.
okay, hang on.
On who?
Ours. Peters.
As revised, 1415.
We roll into that. I think I've got that. 18.78.
Are you there?
No, we're not there.
Where are we at now?
What page?
Our findings.
Page 5.
Findings of fact.
Page 5.
We are on 18.7.
Page 5 right here. We're going to start on 18.7A. That's this baby right here. That's what.
Okay.
Now you're on it.
Yeah.
And our legal counsel doesn't number like we do.
So that's page 5, right? And yours.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm just making sure that we're in the same
Merging them.
1878, I think.
Yeah.
I think that'll make things faster.
I do too.
That's what I'll do.
Okay, standards for 18.7A.
We got, I say it's 1 through 8, because we just added 8 in there as a roof sheet, and they're all good.
Oh, hold on, what was?
Findings under 8.
A is the property subject to the application is located in a zoning district in which the proposed special land use is allowed. Right, 1 through 8. Eight is the one that's highlighted on a separate sheet of paper.
This is it.
Yeah.
Well, the question of 8 should be there, Peter.
Yeah, now that you've already discussed it there, you probably want to wipe that away.
Yeah, it should be put in the general findings area.
Yeah. That's pretty much what you decided, so.
Yeah, that's what we did. So we can do away with 8.
Yeah.
We put it in general to
Right.
decide which one we're going to
Right.
use once we get the definitions.
Yeah.
Right.
So it may come back in one of these.
Yep, you can always reuse whatever. Yeah.
Support of any one of these, yeah. So it'd be 1 through 7 are all right, and with 8
Right.
back over in general.
Okay. So the findings have been met or have not?
Only, no, we gotta go through the
We got-
not support.
We're going to go through each one of these?
Oh, yes, we are.
Okay. Findings that support the standard. 1,
That's all right.
2,
That's all right.
Hold on.
I think I'm referring to the other ones, John. The ones that Peter presented.
No, I think we can have it allowed. Yeah, it's-
Grab on these back, Peter. That's the one part of it, right?
No, we're going to have to.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Here, it is. I've already got that in.
Well, here you know, this is where it gets confusing to me because, we had a discussion on infirmity and it depends really, and if I read number 1 right, I get a little confused with all these 5 here, but my point is if you look at infirmity, it depends on the decision. If you look at infirmity as including the concept of a mental disability, certainly then you can say, well, that meets the criteria because it says it's got to be licensed and yada, yada. But you look at infirm as being specifically designated to look at the age, then you don't have this component in there. So I think there's a possibility you turn it down on that.
Well, the question is, with this statement, it would be a positive statement for the findings. Now, you may not, it's in support. You may not accept it. You may throw it out in your decision.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, the misunderstanding process. I thought we were just going to
we're
discuss
going through the
pros and cons.
findings that support, we're starting with the
Oh, we're
findings.
just going to leave them and then come back and decide.
Yeah, because
okay. Oh, yeah. Okay,
it may
I'm
not.
sorry.
You're going to make a decision of the whole thing does support or doesn't support.
Got it.
Okay, 1 we're all right with.
What
2,
are we saying, 1? That we agree that it's still not support?
No, but
no, this
that
is
is
a
support.
finding that
Will
supports.
not.
We're on the second ones that will not support. Didn't we go 1 through 8 that support it? Now we're in the not support.
Yep, we're in the not support.
Okay.
So when you say, okay, does that mean that this finding is correct?
oh, wait.
The finding would not support.
Okay. So it's
It's
not
okay
support.
in the will not support category.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a not support.
Right.
Yeah.
2,
2?
2 is okay.
No. Okay. that it will
not
not
Will
support.
not support.
Okay, that's the thing that's hard to get across, okay.
Two is acceptable as written as a non-support factor. How's that?
Yeah,
Three?
I see the process.
Yeah, so we're going
Three is
back.
acceptable as a non-support factor.
4,
Hold on here.
Where'd my 4 go?
there's one line on the bottom of that page, and then it goes to another page.
I don't
You
have
don't have 4.
I don't have the line.
That is, oh, you got the wrong one. You got this one. This is the one you have to go through over here.
Let's see that.
Yep, it's it is excluded, it's an allowable right rate. That's as good as use in the field.
It's the same one, except I
You
didn't
didn't
have
get
that
that
line.
bottom line. That's weird.
I missed that one line.
Not allowed.
Okay.
Okay,
4 is acceptable as a non-support factor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
4 is acceptable as a non-support factor.
Agreed.
5,
5 is acceptable as a non-support factor.
6,
I would probably rewrite 6 to read, the Planning Commission finds that the applicant's proposal for a country club use under 10.3.6 is not a part of what is being proposed as an operation in the MAF zoning district, but rather is a use being proposed in the MAF district as a convalescent home.
Yeah, that's better.
okay.
So you're saying it's not a country club now, it's a convalescent home?
I'm saying exactly what that is written as a
Okay.
non-support factor.
Okay, so you're saying this is a non-support?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a non-support.
With this change.
It's just a better wording to make it
Could you
clear.
run that by one more time with the wording this?
He changed 2 words, I think.
I changed the 3 or 4 words.
4, okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then the Planning Commission finds that this standard has or has not been met.
Well, we're not going to.
We're not going to do those?
No,
just
we're
gonna
not going to
go-
make that
We gotta
decision
go look
yet.
at the
We
other
have
side
to go look
first.
at the other findings on those,
Yeah,
on
we gotta go back
18.7A.
We got to go back over to the other side.
Yeah, we're never going to get there tonight, but we should at least get this.
Do
as
you,
a-
with these, do you want to go and look at the other ones?
We're still
One on
in-
one?
Do you want to go all the way through 18.7?
Section 18.7, go through all of yours and then go through all of theirs?
Yeah, I
or-
mean, you can, that's a discretionary decision up on you guys. You know, so if you're gonna go through those,
Which
you wanna
is
look at
gonna
those?
be-
It might be pretty interesting.
Well, that's what we're doing on the other.
That's what you did on the other one, yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to go through the same thing.
But I don't know whether we just keep going on this until we get to the end of
I think
18.7.
we should go through it so we can compare it, just like we did on the first part.
We went all the way through.
We
and
went
then-
all the way through it.
Yeah. Okay, B.
So, oh, here's my, just maybe I'm changing my
Excuse me,
program
I
here.
can't, I'm really having a hard time
Okay.
hearing because I'm really
Okay.
crowd noise.
I think we should go through 18.7A on the other side because this is the crux of the entire proposal.
That's what I was
think this is
asking.
the most time-consuming item that we have.
Could be, yeah.
It is, everything hangs on this 18.7A, so I think it's important to look at both sides. We got a lot of work to do, and we're going to have to gather, and but I think it's important to do it because this is where it's all at.
Okay,
So we want to go look at the,
we want,
Slide over to page 6 of the other.
okay, but under 18.7A, it says the findings that support this standard C Cheboygan County Planning Commission draft findings of fact. So they're basically for A.
They're not providing you any findings.
They're
that are-
using our findings under
I
A.
understand.
There's nothing to be added in those.
They
Right,
say see yours. And they're
Right.
just saying,
Only-
look at your own, and it's
Yeah.
got it there.
right.
So the only ones we have is findings that do not support,
That's right.
that they have provided.
That's right.
You're on the right.
Correct.
Page 6.
No,
That's exactly what it says.
then they changed it to B.
Not B.
We're still at A.
Now, A,
Same
there's no,
Number 7.
There's no
we're ex-
support.
They're accepting
Ours,
page
right.
5, findings back on page 5 and 6 under A. They're not adding anything there. They go to B, and they are.
I think the confusing part, as I'm noticing here, is Bridget Brown Powers uses capital letter A and B for
Yeah.
A being in support and capital B is not in support.
That's,
That's being confused
That's
with our
where-
standards A and B, lowercase.
right.
Yeah. Good point.
So we're still on 18.7A, will not support.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Page 7.
Top of page 6.
Well, I think the second half of that first paragraph, we talked about the greenhouse and workshop in the barn, right?
Right.
So that is either
Well,
allowed or
you're going to have to look at each
right
one of the things
barn.
they're talking
But the
about
top ones,
there.
we got it, yep. I think half of it's okay and half of it isn't.
Yeah, because
Top half is.
the barn is, animal pasture area is obviously allowed to make right in Forest A.
And greenhouse.
And the greenhouse, and the barn.
And so we got
And the
workshop.
workshop.
Okay.
No.
So the conclusion is not a fact.
A portion of it is not, anyway.
Well, the last said
The
that they're
last-
not allowed in the district.
Right. If you look at application, what about the first paragraph where it talks about housing, cottages, garage, laundry, administrative building? That's where it splits out. And we know that this second half, we already talked about right to farm and it's an approved use there, but we didn't talk to see if housing and cottages and administrative buildings stretch into that
Yeah.
zone. And that's a tough, this is where all that stuff hinges, and it's a tough, it's a hard.
Like where are you at exactly?
Top of page 7.
The first four sentences on 7,
Okay.
kind of looked at the
Oh, I
last
see. I couldn't-
portion of that. It's just the housing, cottages, garage, administrative building, and laundry.
Well, it could all, it's not analogous to a convalescent home. It is a convalescent home. And an MAF
So there
is,
is.
it's allowed, right?
That's right.
No, we haven't made that determination.
Yeah, no, we haven't determined if that's convalescent home.
We haven't determined
Determination.
Huh? We will have to,
that. Yeah, that's part of 18A.
just in general.
We got
Have it in the
general
general,
findings.
which didn't mean we made a decision.
Okay.
Well, you're probably going to have to make that decision when as you dig through this first one here. You're at the point by the time you get to the end of
It either it
this
is or it
factor
isn't.
here where you make a decision because you can't be open-ended.
So do you feel a housing and cottages, garage, laundry, and administrative building is analogous to a convalescent home?
They're components.
Yeah, that's not what it says.
Well, I'm not saying they're analogous to them, I'm saying they are.
Yes. That's my contention. The convalescent home will have all of those facilities.
With your convalescent home being your primary and all of those being a portion of.
Now, it could be portions of one building or separate buildings.
There's nothing in the regulation says they all got to be one structure.
Exactly.
Well, I don't believe that's the same as a convalescent home, that portion of it. And that's just mine. I think you'd have to stretch it.
The 9 of us, I guess we'll have to.
That's a big issue, right? I mean, that's
You're going to have to make that decision.
And there's going to be some other ones that
Is there
are.
any reason why we can't have a vote on that at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to have disagreement. You'll probably have votes that will result in some members saying no on various findings and some members saying yes. But if you want to get that issue done, then you might as well go ahead and do that.
Well, there's the question. If there's a vote taken and we say the majority says that this is a convalescent home in the Forest Ag, then I would say that decision is made and everybody's got to live with it.
Yes.
Yeah, then you go through and apply it. They may find other reasons to deny or factors on there, but that is then decided.
Okay.
So Mike, why don't you feel that it's...
Because I don't think in housing and cottage, garage, laundry fits the convalescent home.
Is that part?
I didn't say it's part of it. I said it's not one. It's not analogous to one. It may be portions, and we're not supposed to portion some of that. I just don't think that's exactly the same thing as a convalescent home.
Now, they also have in that district the housing units. They're in there. So you've got them housed. The laundry is going to be there. It's necessary to there. Being there. Administration's there. Barn, workshop, greenhouse.
Those I don't have a problem with. This is under a different act, different program.
But they're part and parcel of the therapeutic farm.
But are we dealing with therapeutic farm or are we dealing with a convalescent home?
I mean, the determination that the convalescent home was the closest item in our regulation to the proposed primary function of this application, which is a therapeutic farm.
But we did not make, we included both of those, 933 or whatever it was, and that.
Theoretically, you could make the motion that it's closest to a convalescent home, pretty much identical to a convalescent home to the extent that it's not identical to a convalescent home. It matches up as a use under 9.3.
That's what I put in
That's something you could do.
Well, then it depends on, again, you have to go back to whether they met the definition of a nursing convalescent home, whether you include the definition that we have, the infirmity, and then you have to make the decision based on that. Because if you say they haven't met the definition, then they aren't a nursing convalescent home. Then you can't say the other ones are analogous to that one. No, it doesn't work. And they're not uses that.
But we're still skirting around the whole issue. That is the issue.
I agree. That's why I bring it up.
So why not just decide right now whether we're going to say that the closest thing to it is a convalescent home? What they're proposing, the closest thing we've got in the regulation is a convalescent home.
I don't know this for sure, Chuck, but
Then come up with something else.
let me finish. I don't think you don't want to say. Okay, I don't know that if by going through the rest of these findings of fact, we won't find other things that lead us to believe that, or would sway someone's opinion to think a little bit differently than they do right at the start. And once we take that vote, you're right, it's all over. You might think later on, gee, I wish I would have known that, when we got to that other, I don't know now, and hey, it's gone.
Then I don't think we can address this particular page at all at this point. You're going to have to go through everything else first and then come back to it. Because this is the crux of the whole thing.
And the definition is important when you decide that.
Okay, you're at 4 to 10, and the problem that I see is basically there's confusion with these other findings. What we can do is we can merge so you have all the findings in a single document. When you come back for a meeting, because I don't think we're going to get very far here, it's critical that every planning commission member read all of those findings. All right, make their notes, come in and be prepared to lay out their positions as to those findings as they go through, so that later on you don't have a different decision because you're prepared and know exactly what you're talking about because you've thoroughly read and made your own determination and prepared for the meeting so that you can quickly argue those positions and move forward. I think that's what we're getting hung up on here, probably because of the fairly recent nature of some of the findings here that were submitted. We can merge that. We can make it into one document. All right. It makes it easier for you to review. Make sure that it's in a format, because Patty was mentioning that some of the formats here are different than what you normally see from staff here. So I'll make sure that staff puts it into a format that makes it easier for you to read the whole thing. But it's critical that you read the whole thing, look at the exhibits that are matched up to those items, decide if you think some of those exhibits should be changed, decide whether you want to strike some of those findings and argue that position, or add some of those findings. If you're going to add something, you can bring it in handwritten, and then I think you're going to have a better and clearer argument and discussion, frankly, amongst yourselves, and we'll probably have a faster decision. But this has to be, I think that's the way to go, because we're getting really bogged down here, and I think that's what you kind of need to do.
So we want to merge.
That's right.
This 18.7A.
Yep. So that it's all
with the other one.
Exactly.
Now do we
Whether
stop
we agree
it?
with it or not.
Whether you agree with it or not. Yeah.
Okay. Now do we stop at 18.7A and go to B and maybe do the same thing?
No, we're going to do the whole.
Okay.
The whole thing.
The
two complete
I'll make a
findings.
motion we merge the two.
So that it's easier for you to go through it and make your own findings, and that way you're better prepared.
I'll support that.
Motion and support to have, you're going to merge it?
Yes, with the assistance of staff.
Legal and staff merge the two findings of fact. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I like that too, because I think it brings all of the information out in the open, and I think everybody then,
Well,
including
it's
the
all
public,
in
gets
the
a
open,
fair
but
shot.
you're looking at one piece. And
Exactly, but I mean, I think
back and
everybody
forth.
now gets a fair shot at looking at it and having their input. I like that.
Well, it's mainly for your benefit. I mean, because you guys are the decision makers
gather,
at this
right.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also
Yeah.
makes it much easier for the public to understand, and if they want to get input, they can do it.
Right, if I may.
Yes.
We'll draft it in format so that the source is also clear, but for and against the factor. It'll be a lot easier to read. We'll give you it in paper copy also, so you have both digital and paper, whatever's comfortable for you.
As long as it's all together, the digital works fine, but this jumping back and forth on digital with the two.
We can even do it landscape and then put them in columns. We'll figure out the right way.
Yeah.
There's a number of different ways.
Either that or-
And then there was also some findings proposed by the applicant.
And those are in the record too. If you want to merge those in there, merge them in.
I think we should.
I think we should merge all of them.
Yeah, merge them in there. Because that seems to be where you guys are heading here. Let's do it on one document.
Is there any way that you can color code?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
I was
have
thinking
three
about
different
that.
color
Yeah.
codes
Yeah.
as to which source it came from?
Either column or color, or we'll
Color code it.
when we get it all together, we'll
Pop
know
it
better
right
about
out.
how to make it read right.
Good.
And I can get it in a hard copy.
You'll all get it in first.
Once that's done, though, I do ask that you guys really hit it hard then. So when you come back here, you've got it all. You may have different positions. It looks like you're going to. Individually, that's fine. But you got to get through it, and then you got to make your votes and move through it. And I think that'll speed things up quite a bit.
Okay. That's where we're going on that one. Okay, any other unfinished business? New business?
Well, I got a whole bunch of new business.
Well, yeah. Staff report.
Eddie, do you have a date specific that you're going to set this for?
Should be fairly relatively
As
fast.
soon as, what is your holiday schedules look like? Because our next meeting is the 6th.
6th of
January. Mhm. But I don't know what their holiday schedules are because I think they're off Thursday and Friday this week and Thursday and Friday next week.
Oh, staff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it for the 6th?
Yeah, that's it.
No.
Well, no, you've got it on,
We've got the 6th scheduled.
They already have it. It's just a matter of.
yeah, getting it where we need it. Okay. We'll plan on it for the 6th.
Do you have anything else on for the 6th?
Yes. Yeah, there's one special use permit that will be coming up as well.
Is that something that can, is it something that really has to get done right now? I mean, it's too bad that we hadn't kept everybody here.
Yeah.
There's 2 other ones we should have scheduled. We know this is going to be a,
The applicant has been waiting their 30 days and waiting for that to be considered. I think it should be considered.
Yeah, I think it's fair to them.
I had a couple other ordinance revisions pending for that agenda, but those can be taken off. Those can be held back. But I would certainly recommend that we service that application that's coming.
In your personal opinion, does it look like it's a controversial one?
It is a communication facility, but it's only a 70-foot tall communication facility in the middle of a property of 130 acres. So
Okay.
agricultural forestry area. So yeah, it is in an agricultural forestry.
Is this yours here? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Any other staff report?
I have no other report.
Planning Commission comments? Any public comments? Mr. Metowski?
It's been a long year.
well spoken.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, if there's nothing further,
Motion adjourned.
thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. You too.
You have to get that.
Are you still going to look at this here?
We're going to have to.
Well, no, and that's, yeah.
One way. That seems to be where the boards